You were also mentioning Kickstarter,
Mm.
right, for the crowdfunding
Yes.
and all, just to dig deep into the process of, how, if you have an idea, what is the process, right? Is it like, do you go and apply, and when you raise the money, how much goes to the website and how much gets to you? Like, could you throw some light on those details?
You are trying to raise money, like it's never too early, and you don't want to be late, right? Like basically, like even if you're talking to your family, you don't want to ask for help when you need it like the next minute, right? And I think that's the first rule of thumb.
So how do you go about coming up with that right idea and having that confidence, okay, that this is the one that I want to work on?
So I think iteration is definitely the key, like trying to push it as soon as possible and then see if you can get some feedback, whether positive or negative. There's no like bad feedback, right? I feel like if you get those kind of feedback, then you can learn more
What
about
piece of like advice would you give for folks who probably are in kind of on the wall? Oh, should I leave a stable job versus should I go and build my own company, which is at a high, probably there is some risk always, right?
Hey everybody, welcome to our podcast, Everything Product. So we talk about latest technology and product management concepts here. So today we have a guest. We are welcoming Kevin here. Kevin moved on to Meta as a product manager, and now Kevin is working on his own new product, which we are going to get into the details and talk more about. So welcome, Kevin. Thanks a lot for being here. And could you give us a very quick introduction about yourself and also your path towards entrepreneurship?
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Like I'm really excited to get to know more about your podcast community and then share a little bit about my background. Yeah, so I actually started my career as a biomedical engineer. So I was building ultrasonic machines and also surgical tools. And then later, like I'll just touch really quickly on how I transitioned to PM. So because I was working in the hospital space, I talked to a lot of doctors, nurses, and patients. And then from there, I realized, of course, I love being an engineer. And then I feel like I even love more talking to different people and understand what's like the real problem we're trying to solve. So that's how I kind of transitioned into working as a product manager. So yeah, like you said, like the actual first startup that I joined is actually called Energis. That was back in 2014. They're actually a company who went IPO within like 2 years. And I was like really lucky to join them right after the IPO. So as a founding product and marketing person. So I kind of learned a lot of those like startup, like 0 to 1, or even how to pitch, how to talk with the investor and things like that with my previous boss. We're still like really good friends, like, and still catch up from time to time. And then just from there, I there's like this concept of I want to work on my own startup where because of all the pitching events make me feel like, hey, maybe I can do this myself, and maybe because that company went IPO, I feel like there's a lot of hope, right? So that's why I kind of joined this company called Candy House back then as like the Circle founder. So this is actually a smart lock that can go on top of the existing door lock. So you can, this is more like a demo, so it's magnetic. But once the user put it on there, they can actually use the app on the phone to control locking and unlocking of the device. And so for this product, definitely one of the highlights, it went crowdfunding. We raised over 1.5 million. And then later, I also helped the company to get some additional funding from the investor, from Amino Capital. And just like a lot of fun stuff going on. And I mean, feel free to ask me any follow-up questions, like, because I don't want to make it too long. So later from there, I kind of got interested again in healthcare. So I kind of went back to the healthcare field for a little bit. So that was, I joined Cognoa, where I helped to develop the first FDA market authorized software as a medical device product that helped doctor and the parents to determine if a young kid have a developmental delays. So that was kind of like got me this whole idea about using AI to evaluate people. And definitely there is some downside, upside, right, about startups. So I can touch base more that I remember some of the questions you have for me is we'll address that as well. So that's kind of like how I got into like Meta, and then later I wanted to work on my startup again, and then now I'm working on Mirwork, where I can help company and candidates to find a better match. maybe I'll just stop here and see if there's any question.
No, that's great, Kevin. So even when we are discussing, right, I see like you tried a lot of different things on your way in your career, right? Trying to become a founder, getting into biomedical healthcare, and then also product manager at Meta, and then again becoming a founder. So one quick thing, right? Like for anybody who's listening and who wants to raise capital, right? I think the biggest thing for anybody before starting a company is, right, okay, I have an idea, I can execute on something, but the raising capital piece is the toughest part, and people don't have clarity into that. So could you throw some light on what are the different avenues people could go to raise some capital, and what are the different strategies for you to follow in them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like that is like the short answer to that is it really depends on like what you're looking for, right? But like I can show a little bit of kind of like my experience, right? So basically, I have done both, like the crowdfunding and more like a C round and pre A with a venture capital. So from there, I really learned that you kind of build a long-term relationship like with almost like all the customer, whether it's VC or like people who might believe in your product. You need to really try to like product manager, like we like to say user empathy, right? So sometimes like when you are like trying to raise money from venture capital, it's not just about the user, right? I'm definitely user story is good, but at the same time, are you working with the right VC? Do they have the type of support? Like do they have the connection that can help you to kind of maybe go from like 1 to 100, right? So I think those are a lot of things that we need to understand like from ourselves, and then maybe work backward to identify some of the kind of like potential target company like who might invest in your product and your team, right? So I think I can jump more deep into maybe like crowdfunding or venture capital. Feel free to chime in if you want me to talk more. So I think for crowdfunding, it was like actually really hot. Maybe starting like 2012. There's Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and there's a lot of a project. First were intended for kind of like niche audiences, like people who are maybe building arts and craft, or even like small project like film or other kind of documentaries. So, but then later, maybe in 2013, 14, like one of the earliest project I saw was really viral. It was like the Pebble. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember that, like the Pebble watch, right? So that was like probably the first one that hit like multiple million and just got everybody really excited about the product. Definitely we know what happened later, but like, I don't need to touch base on that. But like, anyways, like so that kind of got our team excited, right? So we were a bunch of like basically 2 students from like Stanford, and then they had some just like basically some problem with like accessing the dorm room, like dorm door, like the door inside their dorm where it auto lock, and then you gotta always remember to bring a key card, right? So kind of like from that angle, like the 2 of the guys just like try to create a simple solution to address that issue. And then later, because they're already like in the Silicon Valley, right? So they were thinking, hey, maybe we can try to create a company or even just like store this project into the internet and see what happened, right? So that's kind of how we got like the idea of crowdfunding. And I will have to say we work a lot. We did a lot of work, but at the same time we also got lucky because it was really early, like back in like 2015 when we did the crowdfunding. So like not a lot of people, like I don't know, maybe a lot of people use smartphone, but not a lot of people know about like, hey, smart home or like IoT, like or Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, those kind of things, right? Still, so we were probably like one of the earliest project that's like on the smart home area. So and we also had a very viral video. Yeah, I can touch base on that more because I feel like video is really powerful. So I'm also really into photography, right? So I feel like telling a great story that can resonate with your viewer, that makes like a total difference when you want to raise money from like the common people, right? Yeah. So maybe
that'll be great if you can touch base on that video, because was that a Dropbox video kind of moment?
Oh,
where
yes.
okay.
Yeah, so that team actually they're called Sandwich Video. Yeah, the Adam is the founder. So they have a really cool story. Like, so when you taught me then the first, like if you really try to look at like how they started the video company, right? The funniest thing is that they actually try to build an app like for that for their own team. So they try to build a software app or something, but then they try to make a video to talk about the app. Like, so when they show the VC, like of course like VC didn't give them money, but the VC that they talked to was like, oh, I think your video is very creative. Maybe you guys should make video instead. So I don't know if that's true, but like I mean it sold me and and it got me sold, and I really want to kind of like work with them more. And then they are really creative. Like they know how to really take a very like objective view on like your product, evaluate like how to tell a story about the product, and maybe add in some like other like key interest area where people might be curious about, right? So I think a lot of those things is like definitely a lot of back and forth between our team and their team, crafting the perfect story that can be short and memorable and that resonate with the team and the audience. I think that's very powerful. Yeah, it just helps to spread the awareness like so well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, as you were also mentioning Kickstarter,
Mm.
right, for the crowdfunding and
Yes.
all, just to dig deep into the process of, how, if you have an idea, what is the process, right? Is it like, do you go and apply, and when you raise the money, how much goes to the website and how much gets to you? Like, could you throw some light on those details?
Yeah. So if you go to any of the website now, I don't know if the percentage has changed, but if you go to the website, whether it's Indiegogo or Kickstarter, there is like a very clear statement on the platform fee. So if you take a look at that, I remember it's just some percentage, single digit percentage, and then there is some maybe like payment process fee from like I can't remember like Stripe, like like PayPal stuff. They take like 3 or 4%. Yeah,
Okay.
mainly something like that. And a lot of the time, I think it depends on the project you're trying to raise, right? Because there's so many like different things that could happen. Like for example, if shipping hardware, there is gonna be like custom and like a lot of unexpected duties and things like that if you ship to some region of the world. Like I actually personally ship like over 10,000 products around the world, so like it was like a nightmare. Like, but it's like a really fun process. It took us months, but then eventually we're able to ship it, right? So I think that's a really fun journey. Like just like to answer your question is that yeah, most of the money like you get into your bank, but then there's gonna be platform fee and unexpected fee, right? Because people is going to unless you make like 100% workable product for everyone. I know you work at Best Buy, so there's no way, right? So
Yeah.
there's always like shipping, logistic, maybe back and forth warranty, like maintenance and things like that. So yeah, just like be mindful of those things if you're really gonna build a hardware product. There's gonna be a lot more like unexpected things when product go into the user's home. I can even talk about like a few really funny story about what happened in the first few shipments if you're interested.
Sure. Yeah. Please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so there are three stories that really touched my mind. Like because for that product, we actually for the internal gear, like we used Kevlar, which is like a very strong like material, right? So that's one of the thing we advertised. And when we were shipping product to a customer, some customer like write a lot of feedback for us. Like some people like really helpful, right? They are like the first 200 people who bought it. And one person I remember like the first story is like she had like a huge dog. She has maybe a dog that's like Labrador or something, and it was like maybe 120 pound or bigger, and the dog just like tried to chew the lock, yeah, like on her front door, right? So the dog just chew on it, but then all the outer shell, the plastic, all broken, but the gear is intact, like the Kevlar part. So she made a post about, oh, you guys ain't lying, like this thing is really powerful. Right? My dog destroyed everything, but this thing still look like it works, right? It's intact. So that's the first one, and the second one is like I met this NASA engineer in Sunnyvale. It was so interesting. Like he had like some issue with the door. I mean, it's more like the locks and the door. Right, the door is like sometimes not fully flush. So he set up some sort of auto lock. So lock keep trying to close itself, and then eventually drain the battery. So he kind of locked his door, and then he couldn't get in because that's like his apartment. The only exit is the front door, so he had to like kick the door open. And then I was like so scared. I was like, I'm like a few months into the company, I have to deal with that. I have no idea what's gonna happen. So I was like, oh, where are you? Like maybe I can find you. Like it looks like you're in the Bay Area. And he actually texted me his number, and it was super helpful. He even packaged the broken device and gave it back to me. And then because he's like a some sort of aerospace engineer, so he's like even gave me some of his suggestion on what might have gone wrong. So I was like super grateful. Yeah, I feel like the reason why I'm sharing this is like if you have like if you're gonna build a startup and then you really put your heart and soul to it, try to help people to solve some problem, I think good things gonna happen. Like definitely a lot of people are gonna complain, but then they also like trying to provide you with feedback to improve, right? Yeah, and then that's maybe the third story is I can just touch base really quickly. So one of the audience was like a very senior person. Maybe he was like 80-year old or something, and he's like living by himself. And then one day I got a call, like basically he kind of fell on his hip, so he couldn't move. But then because he's working on like home renovation, but then later he called the cop. But then he told the cop not to break his door because his door is very expensive, and he was able to use his phone to unlock the door for the emergency people to come in. So that's why he gave me a call and then say like, oh, how the product kind of saved him from like renovating his door because he knew something happened, something like incident like that happened before, and the emergency team had to like break open his like front door. So that's like those are the few anecdote that came to my mind. There's so many things like that, so I'm like generally really grateful about like all the people around me, especially people I work with or the customer who believe in our product.
That's right. Awesome experiences, and it's always not bright and shiny out there, right? So you have to
definitely
deal with all of these problems you get as a founder. Cool. I know as you talked through some of this crowdfunding stuff, right? Can you also throw light on raising maybe a seed A, B, C fund, and whom to approach, and how does the ecosystem exist and all of that?
Yeah, so there's like I'm also kind of trying to raise again for my new startup Mirwork, right? So I think the landscape or the marketing landscape is a little bit different now than maybe 8 years ago, but I think the whole process is very similar. So like I said, like the way I approach these kind of things, I try to build a long-term relationship with anyone, because the circle is so small, right? IoT, whether or Web3 or some sort of AI kind of things, like everybody is moving towards the trend, right? So maybe 5 years, like 7 years ago, we're looking at big data, Internet of Things, but then later all those people kind of transition into Web3, those things, and then they just do it for AI again, right? So like I feel like if you are trying to raise money, like it's never too early, and you don't want to be late, right? Like basically, like even if you're talking to your family, you don't want to ask for help when you need it like the next minute, right? And I think that's the first rule of thumb. And you want to make sure that, hey, from my current product, what is like the minimum viable product, right? How much do you really need? Like, what's the bootstrap method? Like, do you need to hire some talent? Like, how much will that cost? What's the timeline? And then you need to know like your user well, right? You kind of talk to them, so any kind of VC like talking to you, you can answer their question or at least tell like a really good story about the future, right? So one thing I did before I thought it was very helpful is that I try to talk to the VC, like whether I go to events with them or I try to set up maybe a meeting once every few months, if not few weeks, just to give them an update. So maybe something like, oh, hey, I'm actually trying to maybe start something again, even though I'm working at a big company right now. But then I have this idea and just want to maybe run it by you and see what you think, because you have been seeing a lot more project, right? So I think just like you kind of like utilizing their influence and their resource to learn more as like a mentor-mentee relationship. I think it's much easier for people to open to that kind of discussion first, and then like basically you want to make a good impression, and then continue to keep them updated on your progress, right? So maybe after you tell them about your idea, and then maybe after 2 weeks you're like, oh, I actually found another friend who is also interested in working on this, and maybe do you think this is like a good fit? Because I'm like more a product guy and that guy is more like a CTO. Like, would that be like a good match? Or do you have somebody might be interested in working on this project? Can you recommend it to me? Right. So I think slowly build out those kind of interaction, and maybe after a few months, oh, I have a demo. You want to see it? Like, I can show you, right? 100 people use it already, and then after that, it's much easier conversation to talk about. Oh, this is actually, I need $500,000, and then I probably need to hire a few more people, and I probably need your help to connect me with one of your portfolio company that does like a similar thing, right? So I think that's the process I would encourage people to do, because eventually, even at school, right, there's always like a friend who need help on homework, right? But it's more like an interaction, right? It's even though it's not like really VC versus like the entrepreneur, but it's always about human to human, building connection, like trying to make sure you are trying to help the community as well, right? Because you don't need to. Everyone is so smart, and like everyone's like really good company with great education. But you don't really need to be fixated into a problem unless like it's such a, like you have such a conviction, right? Maybe you'll meet somebody else who inspire you to think differently. Just keep an open mind. Yeah.
I have a question on that as well, Kevin. So as
Sure.
PMs, right, we
Yes.
have a bunch of ideas going on that we want to build for our products and stuff.
Correct.
So as an entrepreneur, that's not easy, because you'll have to find the right idea so that you can put your heart and soul and continue to work on it. So how do you go about coming up with that right idea and having that confidence, okay, that this is the one that I want to work on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm still figuring out, everyone is still figuring it out, right? I don't think there is a right or wrong way. Like for example, I can tell you something about like, there's so many examples. I'm trying to think maybe if there is a example in healthcare that I can share. Let's see how to, I think there are a few parts to it, right? I think definitely the product sense framework is like a really good framework to start with, like trying to understand like a specific user segment that you feel like, hey, maybe they have this pain point that happen most frequently, and it has the biggest pain, and then try to use whatever ways to kind of address that, right? You don't really need to build a like a software product when you can maybe build a landing page to test it first, right? Or you don't even need to build a landing page if you can just like maybe do some sort of like Facebook group, right, about some sort of product, and see if there's people who are engaging with each other or engaging with the Facebook page that you have made, right? So I think it's like a really like try to tread like over thin ice, like carefully, because you don't want to be too like a considerate sometimes, because you just have to like go with your guts and then make some bold move, right? Because that's the difficult part about like building things from 0 to 1, right? So I think iteration is definitely the key, like trying to push it as soon as possible, and then see if you can get some feedback, whether positive or negative. There's no like bad feedback, right? I feel like if you get those kind of feedback, then you can learn more about, hey, maybe this group of customer is the customer I should focus on more. I shouldn't be fixated on this. But at the same time, like nothing is like right or wrong, right? Only time will tell, right? It's like it's hard to define success, right? Because a lot of the things that you might do like in your past, that kind of like shape your personality, your culture, and even like your product and services, right? So I think that's more like an iterative process, and you just have to definitely like be genuine about yourself and your team, right, and your customer, right? If you believe in that like hard, like really hard, and you feel like, even though I don't have traction now, but I still believe in it, as long as I'm getting those interaction or getting those like feedback from the customer, I feel like that's still like a good learning where you can maybe jump to the next stage of like product iteration. The problem with startup is more like you're struggling with time, right? You might run out of fund, or you might just like get beat up by like competitor and things like that, right?
So I also wanted to ask about your latest work, right? Mirwork.
Yes.
I want to understand like how you came up with that idea, how you went about solidifying that idea, talking to the funding, getting the funding for it. Yeah, can you talk more about that as well?
Yeah. You know, that's it just like hit me really hard, like because Sid is the person who's and then you guys are interviewing me, right? Because one of the reason I started Mirwork is it was so hard to get into Meta. Like the interview process is insane, right? Like how do you find the right material at the right time and meet the right peer to practice, whether you're on the first round or second round, or like when you're negotiating for offering, things like that, right? So I think the reason why like I was planning to build Mirrorwork, one of it is more like the community aspect. I feel like when I first started trying to get help from the practice interview, it was very difficult to find people to work with. Like I actually spent so much time. I was like full-time prepping interview, just like to give you a sense of like metric. Like I practiced almost like 350 mocks before I met up, right? Because I was like laid off, and then I found like two jobs like maybe within like 5 weeks. But then one company like rescinded their offer. Another company like kind of like told me, "I'm so sorry, Kevin. We will try to raise fund, but then we failed. The VC didn't want to give us the money, so we don't have this headcount anymore." So I was like super scared, and then good thing I was like able to find some good resource from like the first few people that I met. So one of them person is actually Sid. Like he was very inspirational to me. Like I told him last time as well. Like I still remember the question I asked him. You know, it's like, hey, how do you measure success metric for Facebook Lite, right? So like things like this, like meeting the right people at the right time, it's so hard. Like it's like you have no idea. Like you gotta go through like thousand. I actually coffee chatted with like more than 600 people. I found from those 300 interview, right? Interview prep, and it's just like so difficult to navigate through the noise, and there's so many like payment wall or so many kind of things that everyone is doing, but you don't know if that's right for you, right? But ultimately I feel like practice is what's important. Like I know not everyone have the time to find like 300 people and then did like 200 interviews, right? So that's why I feel like, hey, maybe when there's AI like when LAM came out, I was like, I've been tutoring a lot of students. So I was like, oh, I don't have time to tutor, and then maybe I build something so they can go back and practice, get some feedback, and then they show me something like a report, so I can like pinpoint some of their area that they can further improve their skills, right? Because ultimately, I think as a PM, there is like no sometimes there's no good and bad answer. Definitely there's some rubric to guide that, right? But at the same time, I feel like as a candidate, you want to know yourself as much as possible, so you know exactly how to shine, right? How to show your like character, and then show your personality in a good way that the interviewer can resonate with, right? So that's why I created Mirrorwork. Like, so MIR is like mock interview robot, like acronym. But then the more I thought about it, it's more like a mirror that you see yourself. So that's why our logo is like a mirror. I mean, it's very like nerdy and stuff, but like, but like it's just like one quick fact. It's like ever since I got into Meta, I still continue to meet more people. Like whoever, anyone who have question about like certain like interview type or things like that. I have been doing something I really enjoy doing, like connecting people, right? I think Sid and you guys are definitely are doing the same thing. Like trying to sometimes people will be messaging me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm trying to interview for Google, like maybe the assistant team. Like, do you know anyone there? Like because of the power of community, right? And especially PM, I feel like they're extra curious about what other people are doing as well, to learn more about user in the industry. So I've been connecting like maybe hundreds of people with each other in the past few years. So that's why I wanted to create like a mirror, where maybe eventually we can eliminate all those like the I don't want to say stupid, but all these like mundane part of like the process of interviews, so people can find their job like more quickly, and company can know how to evaluate people in a sooner fashion. I have a lot of like bad story, like bad example of like the interview process for some people. Like yeah, I could share about that too. Like it's just like it has been really hard in the past few years, right? So I feel like, hey, maybe if I can use AI to help the process and automate some things and make people feel more supportive, that would be
Yep.
tremendous for me. Yeah.
That's an awesome
Necessity.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Phani.
No, I was just saying necessity is the mother of invention, right? So you had that necessitating situation where you had to go through. I mean, I really admire you doing that, right? Doing
Yes.
350 mock interviews is crazy. It drains you out big time. And at the same time, like talking to
Yeah.
like hundreds of people just to understand the role in itself is difficult. I feel like
Yes.
what you needed to do the entire background research for your company is done through your mock interviews, and now you're able to use that entire resource to create that company.
Especially in this challenging job market.
Yeah.
I mean, we often get so many LinkedIn messages for availability for mock interviews.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a
so that's a
fundamental.
problem. Like 3 years ago when I was prepping, like there is like, I mean, most of the people who were helping like to mock interview with each other, they were super great, right? But there's a lot of those time where emergency came up or people have to reschedule, and that's definitely normal, right? But as a candidate who have like a interview like a schedule for three days in the future, it's really hard to navigate that, and I kind of understand like the first hand problem, right? And even like you were saying, there are a few people who I've been keeping a really close relationship, like helping them to find a job. Some people have to apply to like 800, if not 1,000 jobs just to get to like 5 or 10 interviews, and then finally getting some like maybe 1 or 2 offer, right? In like the whole year. It took them a whole year. It's like a full-time job search. It's like an infinite loop of like a expectation and a disappointment and keep doing that, right? And it's like crazy. I just don't I just thought to myself, like, there must be a better way. Like, especially I've talked to those people so many times. I know they are really great at what they're doing. It's just there's no processes to help people discover each other, right? Even for company, like you guys want to hear like a really interesting fact I found is like I talked to more than like 40 recruiters in the past few months, and like recruiters will put out job now and then they get like 1,000 like applicants, but then they only have so many time to go through people, right? So maybe they spend a few days, if not like 2 weeks, to go through like 100 120 like pretty good candidates, and then they just like kind of skip the remaining 800. Like, it's not like they don't want to see you. It's just like there's just no way for them to see you, right? It's like
everything.
It's like another funny fact. So I met this engineering manager. He was like a super friendly guy. He was really helping out with the community. And I was like, oh, are you like an influencer? How come you have like 7K followers on LinkedIn? And he's like, no, I never post anything. I just like create a few job. And he got like 5,000 LinkedIn invite the next day. so like things like this is like it's not right. Like I mean, like there must be a better way, right? I feel like people should know how to present themselves and like right in front of the right opportunity, and that there should be a better way to discover greatness in each other and compatibility. So I'm gonna spend my time on this initiative, and hopefully inspire more people and change the process that people are currently getting hired.
Yeah, I actually want to reiterate what you said, Kevin, here. So it's
Yes.
the problem you're trying to address is a very important problem, right? So because anybody who wants to do these mock interviews, right, initially there are a lot of sites where they can start with and they can get their initial experience on how the format is, how to do it in maybe 10 interviews, right?
Yes.
But later as they go, the quality is very important because you need the right partner with the right feedback. And you
Correct.
have faced the same issue, I have faced the same issue, and that's where when we see a person who is actually really good and gives good feedback, and you also get benefit out of it and can add value, you try to schedule more calls with them, right? But it's not
That's
still
right.
sustainable, at the level of interviewing we have to do. Yeah, we have to do like at least, and everybody I've talked to who have been preparing for Meta, Google, or anything, do at least 100 to 150 of these mock interviews, right? And I know that out of which maybe 50% are not that effective, because they're still trying to figure out. They try to schedule a lot of these calls, but they're not effective. So you bringing maybe AI into the picture and building a product which makes people do effective interviews every time is solving for that problem and saving a lot of time for people, and giving instant feedback for people. So I think that's a really important problem for anybody who's an aspiring product manager, right? Wants to do these interviews. I know, Kevin, you are still working on the product and trying to improve it and all. We'll definitely, once this podcast is out, we can give the link out to people so that they can test out and maybe give feedback back to you. But I just wanted to put everything, reiterate everything so that people understand the core problem you're trying to address here.
Yeah,
Cool.
see, like Sid is such an awesome product manager, right? I remember like talking to him, like he was able to like summarize and like narrate a problem, like the use case, like so clearly. Like, so this is great. I mean, I'm sure he practiced a lot as well. So I feel like everyone should be like that, right? Find the best version of yourself. Like don't let like nervousness or like underpreparedness like to affect you during the interview process, right? Because there's just so many permutation out there. Like there's no like one perfect solution like for these kind of case studies. So definitely you want to be on your best side when you step
And
in
product
that
manager
room.
interviews are becoming more like case interviews like before, right? It's
Yes.
not dependent on the experience, on the amount of product which you have done, right? It's only the practice, number of times you have practiced, right, for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you elaborate a bit more
Yes.
on how you are using AI in the Mirwork?
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that we're implementing. I don't know if you went to the website. So right now we're trying to build a multimodality system where the AI acts as an interviewer. So you can like go through like the whole case interview. For example, like how do you design Uber for kid? So the AI will act as maybe like a Google interviewer that asks you a product sense question, and then it will kind of walk you through and also ask some follow-up question about how do you come up with like the solution based on like the mission of Google, mission of like the goal of the product, and then which user you try to focus on and what is the pain point, right? So basically you go through all that whole good like the process of a case interview, and then finally use the like interaction, like kind of like I wrote a program to analyze the interaction between the user and the AI. So kind of give them some feedbacks based on like communication skills, like logic thinking, and other kind of like are you focusing on user empathy and user problems, or in like collaboration, right? Because at the during my time I was practicing, like I couldn't understand like I feel like I developed the system of my own, and I feel like everyone should develop system of their own to how to tackle this kind of problem, right? And ultimately, I think the best experience you can shine is that you treat it as like a conversation, right? Like it's more like you are working with an interviewer. You're not like opposite, right? You're on the same team. You're all like genuinely try to help each other out. You're really passionate about solving problem for the users, and you're taking care of the emotion or the feeling of the interviewer, right? Because I think maybe I can chime in with the experience I learned from Meta, right? So basically, you go to Meta, there's like thousands of people working on the project, and then you work with hundreds of engineers, and then you need to know like how to talk to everyone, right?
Yep.
And some people, like everyone is different, right? I'm sure like everyone is so smart. Like some people they don't really talk, they just think really quickly. Or some people they have like a poker face, but they are really friendly. It's just like you don't know how to interact with them, right? So I think because of those kind of situation in those big company, they purposely test these kind of case interview, right? So understanding how do you go around like the fence, how do you get the insight you need, how do you build rapport when the other party is like not really caring or act like they don't really care about what you're talking about, right? So you need to build that kind of a tenacity to like, hey, break around that ice and then like find some way to interact with the interviewer and get some insight from them and work with them as a team to solve the problem together, right? I think that's the important part, because everyone is like already so smart. They all like pigeonholing, like focusing on their own things. So you need to find some way to bring people together. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's kind of like my understanding. Maybe there's some other way to interpret how they evaluate people, but that's kind of like how I feel.
No,
Yeah.
there's different things that I keep seeing, but another thing that really resonated with me is giving that option to do some mock interviews before actually talking to a human, because I keep talking to several students who are trying to do case interviews, who are trying to do
Yes.
mock interviews and stuff,
Yeah.
but they're very worried that, hey, I have to talk to some random person. How would that person feel? Like,
Yeah.
what should I ask? I'm very hesitant. So having that option
Yes.
to actually talk to an AI
Mm.
and then just do that mock interview, get that practice, and then go talk to a human is like very interesting idea.
Well, I mean, thank you for bringing that up. That was also some of my problem that I was facing, right? Because I have faced I don't want to waste people's time, right? At the same time, I also know like there must be a way I can be better before I try to book a meeting, right? But that fear of booking a meeting with stranger, that is really real. Like it was really hard. I was never like this before I did like the hundreds of interview and start opening up my my conversation with anyone, right? So that fear is valid, and that's also the reason why I thought maybe AI is good for tutorial, right? And the way we design the system, because I have a medical background, so all the data that we kind of collect, we don't really we kind of separate it and making sure privacy and security is like the most important part. Because a lot of time like people talk to ChatGPT, but they're kind of scared, like what do I tell it? Like what I talk to you, like will it go back to the to the things? I think all the kind of data that generated by AI or the human, like it need to be like have full, like the user should have the full ownership of that data, and whichever they need to do with it, like it's their choice, right? So I think that's also something that I feel like if you build a system with AI that's very protecting the user, that can create a more safe environment, so people can well into to like use this tool to learn more about themselves, and then because they trust the platform more, so we can understand more about based on their kind of level and like their interest, how do we match them to the better peer, right? Because there's definitely a lot of time where people have to reschedule, or even like there's a few time where doing my early mock interview practice, people would like, of course they are really busy, right? But the people would be like, hey, I don't think you are ready, so I'm not comfortable like you asked me a good question, right? So I'm gonna like drop the call, right? Which is I think is totally normal, but it feels so bad. Like when I was in that kind of situation, I'm sure the person was like just like they have such a tight schedule. So for example, people are on the second round and they have interview in the next day, they would definitely not waste time on this kind of things, right? Like so I think things like that could be better moderated by AI and tools, but it's hard to do that as a human because there's just so many things flying right through the through the noise. Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually share a story of mine, right? When I was scheduling my first mock interviews, I there is a site to schedule interviews, right? So I scheduled, and first 3 interviews I showed up, but I exited the first 1 minute because I didn't have the thing to do a mock interview. So that was so frightening for me at the starting. But once I did my first, second, third, it got very easy for me. But the first 3, I didn't have that
It's nerve-wracking,
thing
yeah.
to actually start something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to understand more about
Mm.
Mirwork as well. I was very intrigued by the idea, and I know you guys are in the pilot phase and stuff, trying to do this. What kinds of interviews and questions can people practice using Mirwork?
Yeah, so right now because of my background, so we're more focused on like product management and maybe like product science as the first step, right? Because whether you're like interviewing for PM role or if you are trying to start your own company, I feel like product sense have helped me in so many ways.
I think we lost
Because
him.
even when I was doing the crowdfunding
Yeah.
or anything, I didn't know those framework back then. I know I need to do something for the user, but I wasn't really thoughtful and wasn't very concise in my thought process, right? So I feel like product sense, I've practiced the most product sense because I really enjoy like learning from others and also like kind of improve myself on how I craft my stories. So that's the first one we start. But then maybe just give us another week or so. Like we're gonna open up to like execution strategy, even like some behavior
Oh.
interview, and even make it like eventually maybe make it even more interactive where people can put in their job description or their resume so they can craft a more tailored experience for the users. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And also, I'm
Um,
assuming Mirwork probably will have different user segments, right? Like behave,
mm,
like preparing for a product management is completely
uh-huh.
different from preparing for a software like engineer
Correct,
role,
correct.
right? Like
Yes. Yeah, I think yeah, eventually definitely want to be more like horizontally like scope out like the industry, like helping out more people in different areas. It's just like I feel like the coding one, like there are so many company out there. It's like existing competitor, right? It's like lead code, these companies. I feel like maybe they're already doing a pretty good job, and then I don't know how soon ahead I'll think about that industry, but maybe for now I'm trying to focus on kind of like product manager or program manager, like project manager, or even other like consulting, like MBB type of like a case interviews.
it's a good point
Uh,
because I think for a product manager or a program manager, you need that interpersonal connection. You need
yes,
that
yes.
experience
Mm,
versus an engineer probably don't need that, right? Like more, they probably
yeah.
need to do more practice on the lead code, algorithms, data structures, which they don't
Mm.
need literally like a person to talk to always. So,
Yeah, and then one of the like the most requested feature from hearing to like the initial like 100 of users, like people really want to be like in like a safe environment to practice. It's kind of like I don't know if you watch like Dragon Ball. Like there's like this room where you can go into however you want. And it's like you want to have that environment where you can like try to maybe improve your own skills before you it's like a flight simulation, right? You go to that room and then you wear that headset and then you fly around it before you go to the real thing. And then even though it's not exactly same in the real thing, but then you're kind of familiar with that whole process, so you're not really scared, right? So I think that is like the kind of a concept we want to try to bring in, and at the same time, like because of those learning from how people can learn more about themselves, we can know and like kind of maybe recommend them to like better opportunity for them at the stage of their life, right? So
Nice.
that, I mean, that's like a really like far-fetched goal. I mean, we need to do some moonshot idea.
Yeah.
I want one more question on your experience and how it drove to Mirwork.
Mm,
Like I know you were a
yes.
product manager at
Mm,
Meta, right? Can you talk
yes.
about how your experience there helped you in like coming in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy like that experience at Meta. Like, definitely, it's like a tough one, like because the past few years there's a lot of things going on, right? But I think even though like even though wasn't there for that long, maybe a little bit over a year, like I think there are a few things I learned. So first, it's same as the interview, right? There's a product sense, execution, and then there's a leadership, right? So I would break it down by one. So the first one is like, how do you kind of navigate through ambiguity, right? I think that is like so like beautiful because in the sense of building a new product 0 to 1, there is so many difference when you are one person versus if there's like 200 people working on the concept, right? So being able to really navigate whether you are talking to like the engineer or you're talking to the marketing person, you need to quickly find a way to drive everyone together, whether through mission or through like the company, like the organization scope, right? So and back in Meta, I learned a lot about that. So I feel like that is like a really good experience about that. And then as for execution, is more like once you kind of make clarity out of that ambiguity, how do you make sure people are being tracked for what they put into the product and services, right? How do you make sure people are doing the most impactful thing? How do you set up the success metric, whether it's next month or it's next year? I think those two things like fundamentally shape how I view about certain project, because maybe 10 years ago when I first started my startup project, it's more like, hey, we're two engineers, we have an idea, let's just build it, right? Who cares? Like, if people like it, like we go raise money. If not, then maybe we scratch it, right? But now, like, having been like fundamentally like learning in a very structured way, it's easier to like kind of think about why are we doing this, right? I keep asking the question why, like we have all these resources, we have all the time, like why are we fixating on this problem? Like did this really matter to us, right? I think once you answer that yourself, it's so much easier to convince your team or convince VC or tell your parents, right? Because parents is like, I don't know, it's like Asian parents thing, right? It's like, why are you not working on the big company? So like you can be able to get those influence, and you can also be very responsible about yourself and your family as well, right? Because you're really thoughtful about these things, and you're not like just trying to do some. Of course you need to take break, right? I mean, we can talk about that maybe at the last moment, because you can't always be so uptight and like go getter, right? Because that's not sustainable. So I think maybe the third point is like influence without power, right? Like the the leadership principle, or those leadership interview. Because at those big company, you don't have like direct report. Like not everyone is the direct report to you. So how do you find alignment? How do you find the angle to create opportunity for interactions so people will actually listen to you? Because there's so many things people have to do, and they're probably evaluated based on a few things on their OKR, and then why do they need to talk to you and even like work on something that might not be relevant to their goal, right? So that's the influence without the authority. I think that's also really important, right? Like even I was talking to my students, like sometime, back in school, like people create like club, right? Or people try to do fundraising events, right? Like all students, but some people can call out and get like 100 people to volunteer. I feel like that is kind of like the example of influence without authority, and that's why like maybe schools value that. I don't know, and the company also value that. So I feel like those kind of things are the three things that I learned like really deeply throughout my experience at Meta, and I feel like that kind of shaped me how I think more structurally, and help to build product with a mentality to scale it. Not just like 0 to 1, but maybe, hey, I want to get it to like million or 100 million people.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question on
Oh,
that. Like,
sure.
one of the questions which I often get is, how can one switch from like working for a company to building your own company? In that
Yes.
case, like, what piece of like advice would you give
Mm,
for folks who probably are in kind of in on the wall? Oh, should I
mm,
leave a stable job versus
yeah.
should I go and build my own company, which is at a
Mm,
high, probably there is some risk always, right? And
mm.
so, what piece of like key advice that you would give for those folks?
It's that's the real deal, right? It's gonna be very scary. Like I've been like so many startup. I've actually, I don't really talk about it, but I've been in like 7 startup, right? Like the first one I joined when IPO, but then the most of the company I kind of fail, or I'm still waiting on a few to get acquired or IPO, right? So I feel like the scaredness part, or like the being afraid, is always gonna be there, and the type of insecurity is not because of maybe like you're gonna lose all that money. I mean, that's probably one of the factor, but it's more about like what you really want to do in life, right? I feel like if you sit down and like really put enough effort to think about what do you want to do, and do you have the right team, right? Because I think everyone is already experiencing some way, and even if they just started working, right, there's different kind of level of commitment they need to have, maybe whether for their family, or what kind of like mortgage they have and things like that. So I think the most important thing is that you need to kind of evaluate your own situation, and is there something you can do do like as a best next thing, right? Like, can you work on an idea first? Like at the beginning of our call today, like when do you go ask money, right? Maybe you can just do that on the side first. I'm not encouraging everyone to like not do their work, right? It's more like maybe on top of doing your work, you can think about what would be important enough for me to just like work on and then drop everything else, right? I think you need to have like harder conversation with yourself and even with your family, right? If you have a relationship, if your family like need your support, you need to take that responsibility and make a calculated decision, right? So I don't think you can like feel less afraid because of you see some traction. Maybe that can help, but eventually it's more about your mind and soul. Right? If you really want to do that in your life and you don't want to feel regretful, like maybe you should try to test it in a small way without like sacrificing too much first, right? Maybe you spend an hour on the Saturday, try to think about how can I build an MVP out of this, even if I'm by myself, right? And then try to show some interaction, engagement with your friends, family, or try to get some buy-in, right? And I think that can help you alleviate some of the kind of like the afraid or yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think balancing both the personal and professional things matter a lot. I think you may have a brilliant idea, but if you don't have a family to support you for that, I think you're gonna fail, right?
Yeah, so like maybe I know we're like almost out of time. I joined late today, but like I think things like this I can share. So even for photography, right? Yeah, I'm not okay. Maybe I'm like flexing my muscle a little bit. Like, like I really like photography, right? But then at the same time, it's so expensive. So I thought to myself, okay, I I have been playing this for almost like 12, 13 years. But when I was like 3 years in, I was like, okay, I've been taking enough like maybe free photos for events, organizer and different people. So what can I do to maybe generate like other revenue stream, right? So in the past like 5, 6 years, I actually started to take photography, like take photos for couples, for people, and for pets, and even like events for VCs, right? And get paid. Like this is not like a full time thing, but like I feel like I could create some value out of it. So I feel like, oh, I'm putting enough effort, but at the same time, it's not just completely go down the drain, right? But not everyone needs to do that, right? Because sometimes you can just like use this as a personal hobby to relax, because to prevent you from burning out, right? That's already a huge value. Like you don't need to put a dollar sign to everything to feel valuable, right? So I feel like there's so many ways that you can come up with a way to find peace with yourself, and that's like the things that you need to do. Like, I'm definitely like really stressed, right? Like I'm stressed all the time, and or even like I feel like I want to help more, but I feel so weak. Like I couldn't help hundreds of people, right? Because there's so many messages people send to me, right? So things like that, I feel like you need to find a balance. I think the most important thing is finding balance. Like this is funny. Like, did I show you this, Sid? Like this book?
No.
Really?
Oh, okay. That is okay. Buddha's.
Yeah. So like
Okay.
I think I was able to develop a method to find peace with myself through like ancient books, books that help me like. I mean, this is more my belief, right? I think everyone can have their own belief, and maybe they can find a better way, like that can help themselves. Yeah, so just through practice, right? Whether you meditate, whether you do yoga, you play basketball, or you play photography, you have to find a way to find peace with yourself.
That's right. That's absolutely true, right? So whenever you have something which you're hustling very hard on the side, right? There's also something which you have to rejuvenate, get into that flow state and also enjoy it, right? So
yeah. That's why I love being a PM. Like you can get to see so many different things from the company, and there's like so many things you can do, and yet you're so limited to things you could do, right? So it's like more about finding the balance, and how do you craft that story to persuade others. I think I really enjoy doing that. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Kevin. So I think we did a very casual conversation of a lot of different things about your journey, and thanks for all the wisdom and all that insights into it. So normally we do a quick trivia before ending it, and the trivia is like just 2 questions. So if you were to suggest anybody a book, a favorite book of yours, what would that be?
Oh wow, that is difficult. Like I don't really read that much, but like I think the top book, right? There is yeah, this one is definitely really top on my list. Yeah, it's more about like the Siddhartha's journey to find like I don't know, self actualization or something. Yeah, it's basically
Self-realization,
yeah. And there's also another book I read a lot. It's called the English version is called the Book of Change, and then the Chinese version is more like it's called 易经. Basically, it's trying to explain like the world, and the world is like a ever changing space. So everything is always constantly changing, right? But that's not the issue. The issue is more like how do you find how do you see the how do you find a way to it's kind of like how do you find a way to find peace, or find a balanced way to cope with all those changes. Yeah, because in that book is basically like there's a lot of story, and then basically a principle on like 64 stories that can explain how the world works, or how the person,
Okay.
how the mind works, right? And definitely there's a lot of overlap in like all these books, but at the end of the day, I think it's more about like how do you find a way, how do you try enough so you know like, oh, that's something that helped me the most, and then work with yourself. I think that's kind of like the 10 those are the type of like theme that I tend to read more about. Maybe because I was I have been through a lot of those like up and downs, so that's why I try to read this kind of book, because I didn't know how to get help, right? So having, I think now a lot of people use ChatGPT to console that kind of things, which is normal. I feel like people need an outlet, right? They need to talk to something or someone.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Mm-mm.
And if you were to mention a go-to podcast or a YouTube channel, what would that be?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I personally just recently started to listen to podcasts, and I even I told you, right, I started a podcast with a few friends called Upturn Podcast, where we want to capture things like up and down in the startup, and how people turning around and then making it into success, right? So I guess I would be recommending that podcast. But then for YouTube channel, definitely there's so many one out there. Like one channel I follow a lot is like the MKBHD, right? The tech
Yeah.
review guy. Yeah, or you even yeah, who else? There's a lot of movie talk channels that I subscribe to, because I have no
Okay.
time to watch movie. But I feel like watching movie kind of allow me to see other perspective of people in life. A lot is fictional, but it kind of helped me to create that. Oh, I have a better understanding of the world, and then what's out there, and then maybe I don't need to be in that situation, but I can learn from looking at what people did in that story. Yeah.
Awesome. And if people want to reach you, right, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's probably the best way. Yeah, and I will respond to every LinkedIn message. Yeah, and I'll share my account link if you're interested to do a coffee chat. I'll never turn anyone down. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks a lot for the great conversation, Kevin. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I wish you all success. I can't wait to watch more of your videos and learn more from each other. And yeah, just keep in touch. Let me know how else I can help. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks,
Awesome.
Kevin.
Thank you.